Get out of my lobby. Right now. The words cracked through the polished air of the Horizon Grand Hotel like a glass shattering on marble. Guests froze mid-conversation. A businessman near the coffee bar lowered his phone. A family waiting for check-in turned toward the front desk. Even the soft piano music drifting through the lobby suddenly felt distant. Gregory Vance, the hotel manager, stood behind the reception counter with his arms folded tightly across his chest, staring at the woman in front of him as if she had wandered into a place she did not belong. The woman never raised her voice. She didn't argue. She didn't even blink. Aisha Carter stood quietly in a plain black t-shirt, dark jeans, and white sneakers. No designer handbag. No jewelry worth mentioning. No visible sign that she possessed the kind of wealth people usually expected to see in places like this. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Aisha Carter. Gregory pointed toward the revolving doors. Penthouse guests don't walk in looking like that, he said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. A few uncomfortable glances spread through the lobby. Some guests looked away. Others kept watching. Aisha simply rested one hand on the handle of her small travel bag. I have a reservation, she said calmly. Gregory laughed under his breath. I'm sure you think you do. Behind him, Lauren Hayes, a front desk associate with a tight smile and sharper judgment, exchanged a look with another employee. Kevin Patel leaned against a workstation and shook his head. The conclusion had already been reached before a single fact had been checked. Across the lobby, a young travel blogger named Sophie Lynn slowly lifted her phone. She wasn't recording yet. Not officially. But something about the scene felt wrong. The luxury hotel gleamed under warm chandeliers. Fresh flowers sat in crystal vases. The scent of expensive candles floated through the air. Everything about the place advertised comfort, respect, and world-class service. Yet standing at the center of it all was a woman being treated like an inconvenience. Gregory stepped forward again. You heard me, he said. Leave before security gets involved. Still, Aisha did not move. The silence around her seemed stronger than the manager's authority. It unsettled him. People who were embarrassed usually argued. People who were lying usually became defensive. But Aisha did neither. She simply looked around the lobby as if she were studying every detail. Every face. Every decision. Every mistake. Near the concierge desk, Elena Ruiz felt a knot forming in her stomach. She recognized something about the guest. Not her face. Not her name. Something else. Something she couldn't place yet. Gregory mistook the silence for surrender. This is your last warning, he announced. You don't belong here. For the first time, a murmur rolled through the crowd. Sophie pressed record. Kevin smirked. Lauren crossed her arms. And Aisha Carter slowly sat down in one of the lobby chairs, placed her travel bag beside her, and looked directly at the manager. Then I guess, she said quietly, we're about to find out who really belongs here. Aisha Carter remained seated while the tension in the lobby stretched tighter with every passing second. Gregory Vance expected resistance. He expected excuses. He expected her to gather her bag and leave. Instead, she looked completely at ease sitting in a leather chair beneath a chandelier worth more than many cars parked outside. That calmness bothered him more than any argument could have. Around her, guests continued pretending to return to their routines, but nobody truly did. Eyes drifted back toward the woman in the black t-shirt. Phone stayed half-raised. Conversations became whispers. The lobby no longer felt like a luxury hotel. It felt like a stage moments before the curtain rose. Gregory walked behind the reception desk and glanced toward Lauren. Call security, he said quietly. Lauren nodded immediately. Kevin folded his arms and smirked. She is waiting for someone to save her, he said. That is usually how this goes. Aisha heard every word. She simply crossed one leg over the other and glanced toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. Rain clouds rolled across the skyline. The city looked gray and distant. Her expression never changed. What nobody in that lobby knew was that Aisha had walked into hundreds of properties during the past 15 years without announcing who she was. Restaurants, conference centers, hotels, resorts. She had learned something important long ago. People revealed their true character when they believed nobody important was watching. Titles changed behavior. Status changed behavior. Power changed behavior. But integrity did not. Integrity remained visible even when nobody thought it mattered. That was why she never arrived with an entourage. That was why she never called ahead. That was why she dressed exactly the way she did now. Across the room, Sophie Lynn continued recording. Her followers had already started responding. Some questioned the situation. Others immediately recognized the familiar pattern. Sophie glanced at the growing stream of comments and felt increasingly uncomfortable. The manager seemed less interested in verifying facts than proving a point. Near the concierge desk, Elena Ruiz quietly opened a terminal. Something about the guest would not leave her mind. She typed a few commands and searched the reservation system. Seconds later, her eyes widened slightly. There was indeed a reservation. Not only that, it carried a designation she had never personally seen attached to a guest profile. Elena looked again to make sure she was reading correctly. Then she looked toward Aisha. The woman remained seated, completely unbothered. Elena felt a chill run through her stomach. Meanwhile, Gregory returned to the center of the lobby. "Last chance," he announced. "You are creating a disruption for paying guests." Aisha slowly lifted her eyes toward him. "Am I?" she asked softly. The question landed harder than Gregory expected. Several nearby guests exchanged glances. Nobody could remember hearing her raise her voice. Nobody could remember seeing her behave improperly. The disruption seemed to be coming from somewhere else entirely. Gregory ignored the growing discomfort in the room. "You need to leave." Aisha tilted her head slightly. "Interesting." "What is interesting?" Gregory snapped. For the first time, a faint smile appeared on her face. "You still have not asked for my reservation number." The lobby fell quiet. Kevin stopped smirking. Lauren looked away. And near the concierge station, Elena stared at the screen in front of her, realizing that everyone in the room was only a few minutes away from discovering exactly who they had been talking to. The atmosphere inside the Horizon Grand grew heavier by the minute. What had started as an uncomfortable confrontation was becoming something much larger. Gregory Vance could feel control slipping away, and that only made him more determined to assert it. He marched back behind the reception counter and pointed toward Aisha as though she were the source of every problem in the building. "I am done wasting time," he said. "Security will handle this." Moments later, a uniformed security supervisor named Robert Mills entered the lobby. He was in his early 40s, professional, calm, and clearly confused by the tension waiting for him. Gregory immediately took over the conversation. "This woman refuses to leave," he said. "She claims she has a reservation, but she cannot prove it." Aisha remained seated. Robert looked at her, expecting anger or frustration. Instead, he found neither. "Ma'am," he said politely, "is there an issue with your reservation?" Gregory interrupted before she could answer. "There is no reservation." The speed of the interruption caught Robert's attention. Nearby guests noticed it too. Sophie Lynn continued recording from across the lobby. Comments on her video were arriving faster now. Thousands of people were watching events unfold in real time. Kevin Patel noticed the phones and became visibly irritated. "Everybody is acting like she is some kind of victim," he muttered. Then he walked behind the desk, opened a storage drawer, and pulled out a clear guest verification form. "If she belongs here," he said loudly, "she can complete this." He dropped the form onto the counter with exaggerated confidence. Gregory nodded approvingly. Lauren folded her arms again. Aisha slowly stood from her chair and walked toward the desk. Every eye in the lobby followed her. She glanced down at the form. Then she looked up. "Interesting," she said quietly. "What now?" Kevin asked. Aisha tapped a section near the bottom. "This document was discontinued 6 months ago." Silence followed. Kevin's confidence flickered. Gregory immediately stepped forward. "That changes nothing." But the damage had been done. Several guests exchanged looks. If the form was outdated, why was it still being used? Elena Ruiz watched everything from the concierge station. The reservation profile remained open on her screen. The designation beside Aisha's name continued staring back at her. Owner-level access. She swallowed hard. She knew what it meant. More importantly, she knew Gregory had never bothered checking. Yet instead of verifying facts, the staff kept creating new accusations. The hotel was digging its own grave one decision at a time. Gregory suddenly pointed toward Aisha's travel bag. "What is even in there?" he asked. "Nothing that concerns you," Aisha replied. "That sounds suspicious," Lauren added. Robert shifted uncomfortably. The conversation no longer sounded professional. It sounded personal. Sophie lowered her phone for a moment and shook her head. The treatment made less sense with every passing minute. Then Aisha reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She tapped a contact and held it to her ear. Nobody could hear the voice on the other end. "Good afternoon," she said calmly. "Please begin documenting everything from this moment forward." Gregory laughed. Kevin smirked again. Lauren rolled her eyes. They thought it was a bluff. But across the lobby, Elena stared at the reservation screen and felt her pulse quicken, because she knew something they did not. Whatever happened next, the people standing behind that reception desk were running out of time. The call ended, and Aisha slipped her phone back into her pocket as if nothing important had happened. That calm confidence only made Gregory more irritated. He wanted a reaction. He wanted frustration. Instead, the woman he had spent the last several minutes trying to remove looked more comfortable than anyone else in the building. The lobby lights reflected off polished marble floors while the tension continued spreading from one corner of the room to another. Robert Mills remained near the front desk, watching carefully. Something about the situation felt wrong. Procedures were being skipped. Assumptions were being made. Facts were being ignored. Across the lobby, Sophie Lynn checked her screen and saw the number of viewers climbing again. Comments flooded in faster than she could read them. Many people were asking the same question. Why had nobody verified the reservation? It was a simple question, yet nobody behind the desk seemed interested in answering it. At the concierge station, Elena Ruiz finally made a decision. Her hands felt slightly unsteady as she stepped away from her terminal and approached the reception area. Gregory immediately noticed. "What are you doing?" he asked sharply. Elena hesitated for only a second. "I checked the system." Gregory's expression hardened. Lauren looked toward her. Kevin stopped pretending not to listen. The lobby grew quiet. Elena swallowed and continued. "She has a reservation." Several guests exchanged glances. Gregory laughed dismissively. "That is impossible." "It is not impossible," Elena replied. "I saw it myself." Kevin stepped forward. "Then you read it wrong." Elena shook her head. "No, I did not." The words landed like a crack in a wall that had been slowly forming all afternoon. For the first time, Gregory looked uncertain. Only for a moment. Then his confidence returned. "A reservation proves nothing," he said. "People make mistakes in the system all the time." Elena looked directly at him. "There is more." Gregory's jaw tightened. "What more?" Elena glanced toward Aisha. The woman remained silent. She neither encouraged nor stopped her. That silence somehow made the moment feel even larger. Elena took a breath. "The profile has a clearance designation attached to it." Lauren frowned. Kevin looked confused. Robert watched carefully. "What designation?" Gregory demanded. Elena hesitated. She was not supposed to discuss internal classifications publicly, but the situation had already gone far beyond normal procedure. "Owner-level access," she said quietly. The words seemed to drain the sound from the room. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Kevin blinked. Lauren stared. Sophie nearly dropped her phone. Gregory's face remained frozen, but the confidence in his eyes flickered. "That cannot be right," he said. "I checked it twice," Elena answered. "It is right." A murmur rolled through the lobby. Guests who had remained silent until now began whispering openly. Robert slowly turned toward Gregory. "Did anyone verify the profile before this started?" he asked. Gregory ignored the question. His attention remained locked on Elena. "You do not know what you are talking about." But the certainty was gone from his voice. Aisha finally stood from her chair. The movement was small, yet every eye followed her. She picked up her travel bag and calmly looked around the lobby. Then she looked directly at Elena. "Thank you," she said. Elena nodded. Gregory felt the room changing around him. The people who had accepted his version of events minutes earlier were beginning to question everything. And for the first time since Aisha walked through the front doors, he realized he might not be controlling the story anymore. Aisha could feel the shift in the room. It was subtle, but it was there. The certainty that had surrounded Gregory minutes earlier was beginning to crack. Questions were replacing assumptions. Doubt was replacing confidence. Yet instead of stepping back, Gregory doubled down. "A label in a computer system does not change anything," he said sharply. "People manipulate records all the time." The statement drew uneasy looks from several guests. Even Lauren seemed less certain than before. Robert Mills glanced between Gregory and Elena, trying to understand why a routine reservation dispute had spiraled into something so strange. Aisha remained calm. She had seen this moment before. Not this hotel, not these people, but this exact moment. The moment when someone realizes they might be wrong and chooses pride instead of truth. The memory arrived unexpectedly. She was 16 years old again, standing inside a hotel lobby in Charlotte, North Carolina. She remembered the polished floors, the oversized plants near the entrance, the clerk who looked at her clothes before looking at her reservation. She had been waiting for her parents after a delayed flight. She still remembered the embarrassment when a staff member approached and told her that guests were uncomfortable. She remembered explaining that her family had a room. She remembered being ignored. Most of all, she remembered the feeling. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. The feeling of being judged before being known. The memory lasted only seconds, but it carried the weight of years. Back in the present, the Horizon Grand lobby felt strangely familiar. Different city, different faces, same assumptions, same script. Gregory pointed toward the entrance again. "You are still creating a disruption," he said. "This situation ends when you leave." Aisha looked directly at him. "No," she replied quietly. "This situation ends when someone decides to tell the truth." The words settled over the lobby like a storm cloud. Nobody spoke immediately. Across the room, Sophie Lynn watched comments pour across her screen. Thousands of strangers were now debating what was happening. Some defended the hotel. Many did not. One comment appeared repeatedly. "Verify the reservation. Verify the reservation. Verify the reservation." Such a simple solution. Yet nobody behind the desk seemed willing to do it. Elena stood her ground. "The profile is real," she said. "I checked everything twice." Gregory turned toward her. "You are making a mistake." "No," Elena answered. "I think the mistake happened before I ever looked at the system." Several guests nodded. Robert noticed it. Lauren noticed it. Even Kevin seemed uncomfortable now. The lobby was no longer united behind management. The room had begun thinking for itself. Aisha slowly reached into her pocket again and looked at her phone screen. A new message had arrived. Then another. Then a third. She read each one without reacting. Gregory interpreted the silence as weakness. He smiled slightly. "Still waiting for someone to rescue you?" he asked. For the first time, Aisha smiled back. It was not a large smile. It was not a dramatic smile. It was the smile of someone watching a clock reach exactly the time she expected. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and looked around the lobby one more time. "No," she said softly. "I am waiting for people to finish showing me who they really are." Aisha's phone remained silent in her hand, but far beyond the walls of the Horizon Grand, a different kind of activity had already begun. In corporate offices across the city, notifications were appearing on screens. Internal compliance teams were opening files. Human resources specialists were reviewing employee records. Legal advisors were accessing archived complaints. None of it happened with dramatic announcements. None of it happened with raised voices. It moved quietly, efficiently, almost invisibly, the same way real power often moved. Back in the lobby, Gregory Vance still believed he controlled the situation. He paced behind the reception desk, speaking with increasing confidence, as if repetition could transform assumptions into facts. "I have managed this property for 8 years, he declared. "I know exactly how to identify suspicious behavior." The statement drew fewer nods than before. Guests who had once looked uncertain now seemed skeptical. Robert Mills noticed it immediately. The room had changed. People were no longer watching Aisha. They were watching Gregory. Every word he spoke was being measured. Every decision was being questioned. Across the lobby, Sophie Lynn checked her phone again. The video had spread far beyond her followers. Comments from hospitality professionals, business owners, and frequent travelers were appearing by the thousands. One former hotel executive wrote that no reputable manager would refuse to verify a reservation before escalating a situation. Another pointed out that every step taken so far violated basic guest service principles. The court of public opinion was beginning to reach its own conclusions. Meanwhile, Elena returned briefly to her terminal. Curiosity had become concern. Concern had become certainty. She opened additional records connected to the property. Her eyes widened again. Several guest complaints appeared under Gregory's management history. Similar patterns. Similar descriptions. Guests feeling unwelcome. guests claiming they had been judged before being helped. Most had been dismissed as misunderstandings. Looking around the lobby now, Elena wondered how many had not been misunderstandings at all. Aisha received another message. This one caused the slightest movement at the corner of her mouth. The documentation was complete. Security footage was secured. Employee communications were being preserved. Every action from the afternoon now existed as a permanent record. Gregory noticed the expression and misread it. "Good news?" he asked sarcastically. "Actually," Aisha replied, "yes." The answer unsettled him more than he expected. Lauren shifted nervously behind the desk. Kevin avoided eye contact. Neither seemed as certain as they had 30 minutes earlier. The foundation beneath them was weakening. They could feel it even if they did not fully understand why. Robert stepped forward. "I still think we should verify the reservation directly," he said. Gregory immediately rejected the suggestion. "We are past that." Several guests exchanged glances. Past verification. Past facts. Past evidence. The statement sounded absurd the moment it left his mouth. Aisha looked around the lobby and noticed something remarkable. Nobody was standing behind Gregory anymore. Not really. The authority he relied upon had begun dissolving under the weight of his own decisions. Then her phone vibrated one final time. A short message. 3 words. "Protocol fully active." Aisha locked the screen and slipped the phone back into her pocket. The storm she had quietly set in motion was no longer approaching. It had already arrived. The only difference was that Gregory still could not hear the thunder. The lobby no longer belonged to Gregory Vance. He simply had not realized it yet. The change happened gradually, almost invisibly, like daylight fading into evening. One guest stepped closer to Aisha, then another. Not to protect her, not to interfere. They simply wanted a better view of what felt increasingly like a truth struggling to break through a wall of pride. Sophie Lynn lowered her phone for a moment and looked around. The atmosphere was completely different from when she first started recording. Earlier, people had watched quietly. Now they were speaking. A businessman near the coffee station shook his head. "None of this makes sense," he said. An older woman standing beside him nodded. "If she has a reservation, why are they still arguing?" Another guest added, "Because they made up their minds before they checked the facts." The words drifted across the lobby and landed harder than anyone expected. Gregory heard them. Lauren heard them. Kevin heard them. The confidence that once filled the reception desk had become something else entirely. Defensiveness. Robert Mills noticed it too. He had worked security for more than a decade. Most conflicts followed predictable patterns. This one did not. Usually evidence calmed people down. Here, evidence seemed to make management more determined to ignore reality. Elena Ruiz remained near the concierge station, no longer hiding what she knew. Every few minutes another employee quietly approached her with questions. Had she really seen the profile? Was the reservation real? Was the designation authentic? Each time, Elena gave the same answer. Yes. The consistency of her response carried weight. Across the lobby, Aisha stood quietly beside her travel bag. She did not encourage the growing support around her. She did not ask anyone to defend her. Yet people continued doing so anyway. There was something powerful about watching someone remain calm while being treated unfairly. It forced others to confront what they were seeing. Sophie checked her screen again. The comments had become overwhelming. Thousands of strangers were reaching the same conclusion. Verify the facts. Stop making assumptions. Treat people with dignity. The messages came from every corner of the country. Different backgrounds. Different opinions. Yet somehow they all agreed on one thing. Something about this situation felt deeply wrong. Gregory attempted to regain control. "Everyone needs to stop speculating," he announced. "Hotel management is handling this appropriately." The statement was met with silence. Not respectful silence. Skeptical silence. The kind that appears when trust has already left the room. Then something unexpected happened. A guest who had remained quiet for nearly the entire incident stepped forward. He wore a navy business suit and carried a leather briefcase. "I travel over 100,000 miles a year," he said calmly. "And I have stayed in hotels all over this country. I have never seen a manager refuse to verify a reservation this long." Several people nodded immediately. Another guest added, "Neither have I." A third voice followed. Then a fourth. The lobby had found its voice. Gregory looked around and realized he was standing alone. Not physically. Lauren and Kevin were still beside him. But the room itself had moved on. The assumptions that started this confrontation no longer had support. Aisha noticed the shift immediately. The people surrounding her did not know who she was. That was what made the moment meaningful. They were not standing beside power. They were standing beside principle. And sometimes that mattered even more. As the rain continued falling beyond the glass entrance, the balance inside the horizon grand quietly tipped. For the first time all afternoon, the crowd was no longer waiting for management to explain itself. They were waiting for the truth to reveal itself. A sudden chime echoed from behind the reception desk. Then another. Heads turned simultaneously. Lauren looked down first. The access badge clipped to her uniform flashed red. Confused, she tapped it against the terminal beside her workstation. Access denied. She tried again. Same result. Kevin frowned and reached for his own terminal. His screen froze for a second before displaying a message he had never seen before. Credentials suspended. Gregory stepped forward immediately. "What is going on?" he demanded. Nobody answered because nobody knew. The lobby, already silent, became motionless. Then Gregory's computer screen refreshed. A new window appeared. Corporate authorization override. His expression changed instantly. Not dramatically. Not all at once. It happened the way confidence leaves a person when reality finally arrives. Across the room, Aisha Carter calmly picked up her travel bag. She took a few measured steps toward the reception desk. No hurry. No anger. No celebration. The guests watched her approach as if they already knew something important was about to happen. Robert Mills noticed Gregory staring at the screen. "What does it say?" he asked. Gregory did not answer. His eyes remained locked on the message. Then another notification appeared. Executive Compliance Division. Active investigation authorized. Lauren's face turned pale. Kevin looked from one screen to another. Neither understood why every system in the hotel suddenly seemed to be operating without them. Aisha stopped directly in front of the desk. The polished marble reflected the chandelier light above her. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then she finally broke the silence. "You asked who I was." Gregory swallowed. "What is this?" he asked quietly. Aisha looked around the lobby before answering. She looked at Elena. She looked at Robert. She looked at the guests who had chosen fairness over assumptions. Then her eyes returned to Gregory. "You call me suspicious." Silence. "You told me I did not belong here." More silence. "You refused to verify my reservation." Nobody moved. Aisha's voice remained calm. That made every word hit harder. "The problem was never that you did not know who I was." Gregory stared at her. "Then what is the problem?" Aisha answered without hesitation. "The problem is how you treated me when you thought I was nobody." The lobby seemed to stop breathing. Then she reached into her pocket and placed a small black card on the reception counter. Gregory looked down. Lauren looked down. Kevin looked down. The hotel logo was embossed in silver across the surface. Beneath it appeared a name they all recognized instantly. Aisha Carter, founder and chief executive officer. Owner. Nobody spoke. The silence became almost overwhelming. Across the lobby, Sophie lowered her phone for the first time all afternoon. Even she was stunned. Elena closed her eyes briefly. The truth she had suspected was finally standing in the open. Gregory looked from the card to Aisha and back again. "You own this hotel?" he whispered. "Not just this hotel," Aisha replied. "The entire hospitality group." Another chime sounded. Then another. Multiple terminals refreshed simultaneously. New notifications appeared across the system. Employment status under review. Executive action pending. Around the lobby, guests exchanged stunned looks. The reversal had arrived. Not through shouting. Not through threats. Through truth. Gregory had spent the entire afternoon trying to remove the one person whose authority outranked everyone in the building. And now every screen, every terminal, and every flashing red badge was forcing him to confront a reality he could no longer deny. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The rain continued tapping softly against the glass walls of the lobby while the reality of what had happened settled over everyone present. Gregory Vance stared at the card on the counter as if it might somehow change. Lauren looked down at the red notification still glowing on her screen. Kevin stood frozen beside her. The confidence that had filled the room earlier was gone. In its place stood something much heavier. Consequence. Aisha Carter remained calm. She had not raised her voice. She had not demanded respect. She had simply allowed people to reveal themselves. Another notification appeared across the management terminals. Executive review complete. Employment access revoked. Lauren's badge flashed red again. Kevin's followed seconds later. Gregory's terminal locked entirely. Robert Mills watched quietly. He had seen people lose authority before, but never like this. Not because of a technical error. Not because of a business failure. Because they had ignored the simplest responsibility of all, treating another person with dignity. Across the lobby, murmurs spread among the guests. Sophie Lynn lowered her phone and looked around at the faces surrounding her. Earlier, many of those same people had been uncertain. Now they understood exactly what had happened. The issue had never been a reservation. It had never been a security concern. It had never been a policy question. The issue was judgment. The issue was assumption. The issue was deciding who mattered before learning who they were. Gregory finally found his voice. I did not know, he said quietly. Aisha looked at him. That is exactly the point. The words landed with more force than any argument could have carried. Gregory lowered his eyes. There was nothing left to defend. No explanation sounded reasonable anymore. No excuse could erase the choices that had been made. Aisha turned toward Elena Ruiz. Thank you for speaking up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Elena looked genuinely surprised. I just told the truth. Aisha smiled. That is usually harder than people think. Several guests nodded. The statement resonated throughout the room. Then Aisha looked toward the crowd gathered around the lobby. Business travelers, families, tourists, employees, complete strangers who had chosen fairness over convenience. Today was never about finding a problem, she said. It was about understanding how people are treated when they appear to have no power. The room remained silent. Every person listened. Character is revealed when nobody believes they are being evaluated, she continued. Anyone can offer respect to a title. Anyone can offer respect to wealth. The real test is whether you offer respect before you know those things exist. The words settled over the lobby like a final verdict. Outside, the clouds had begun to break apart. Thin rays of afternoon sunlight pushed through the Seattle skyline. Inside, the tension that had dominated the day finally faded. Aisha picked up her travel bag and prepared to leave the reception area. Before turning away, she looked once more at the people around her. I did not raise my voice today, she said. I raised the standard. No applause came immediately. The moment was too honest for that. Instead, people stood quietly, reflecting on what they had witnessed. And as Aisha Carter walked deeper into the hotel she had built, one truth remained behind in the lobby long after she was gone. Respect should never depend on appearance. Because the moment we decide who belongs based on what we see, we reveal far more about ourselves than the person standing in front of us.